Today's Top Med Talk is a two-part piece. This is part one of two.
Top Med Talk.
So I'm Desiree Chappell, managing editor of Top Med Talk and vice president of clinical services for NorthShore Anesthesia and your host for this evening. And I'm joined by my co-host in the United Kingdom, editor-in-chief of Top Med Talk, chair of anesthesia and critical care at the University College London, Professor Monty Mythen, my partner in crime. Monty, how are you, bud?
I'm absolutely fine and dandy, Desiree. It's only about 11:30, just 30 minutes till midnight here, so we're full of beans and ready to rock and roll.
Well, it is with great pleasure and extreme enthusiasm, really, I introduce our next guest. We have Dr. Jeff Vender. Professor Vender is the Emeritus Harris Family Foundation Chairman of the Department of Anesthesiology at NorthShore University Health System in Evanston, Illinois, which is close to Chicago, basically. And he's also a professor at the University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine. We're totally jealous that he gets to be in Chicago tonight. But he served on numerous board of directors in the healthcare system and beyond, and he is going to share his views on leading in time of change. If you don't already know him, be prepared for a very lively conversation. Jeff, how are you, buddy?
Good evening. Great. Couldn't be better.
Well, Jeff, thank you for joining us so much and taking the time out. And for our audience that may not know you, tell us just a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I've been a practicing anesthesia critical care physician for over 40 years in the North Shore of Chicago system of healthcare with teaching hospital associated initially with Northwestern, later with the University of Chicago. I was chairman of our institution. I stepped down after 25 years, ran critical care for 23 and anesthesia for 25. And instead of retiring, stayed on as a clinical anesthesiologist. It's been a very difficult separation for me. I'm half-time, and I don't necessarily see the end in sight. It's a lot easier than running things. Working's a lot easier. So all the benefits of running something are great. But the lack of responsibility other than the patient is a significant improvement in my life. Trust me.
Sometimes it's nice just to go into work, do your job, and go home.
Exactly.
Well, Jeff, this is a big subject. So we ask you to talk to us about leading in times of change. Tell us a little bit about that concept.
Initially, when I was asked, it was leading in times of healthcare change. But my biases are such that I think leading in times of change are much more appropriate because everything in our lives is changing, whether it's our politics, our environment, our age. There's a continuation of change. You can't avoid it. And if we're not adapting to it as we get older, whatever the situation might be. So when I think about change, I think about it as far as our lives go, our work environment, and our personal being. So that's the first point. And then I believe change is hard for all of us. It is a difficult process, but most of the time, most of the changes are incremental or not significant. But every so often, significant events, urgent things come up, complex things come up, and that's where the leadership comes in. I'm a big proponent that you can't have significant change of any kind in the absence of leadership. But I'm not talking about the kind that sits at the top of the mountain and yells out to everybody, this is where we're going. No, they yell out to the layer below them, who yells out to the layer below them, because most change is local. It doesn't come from screaming at the sky and hoping somebody hears you. And that's why so many of healthcare changes have failed. And in my short video that I did for you, I'll express, you had me do a 13-minute deal, a couple of those things that we can talk about. I think we still haven't conquered hand washing around the hospital. A topic that's been going on for 30 years because we haven't gotten it to the personal individual level, and just putting signs up and putting the structure in place doesn't attack the emotional element that gets people to be personally accountable and responsible. And that's where we miss when you talk about normalization of deviance. The reason it persists is, again, at the individual level and the cultural engagement that we have within our organizations or our purpose. And hopefully after the video, we'll talk more about that, or at your wish and whim. But that's my perspective on leading in times of change. Change is hard. It necessitates leadership. Oh, and the last point, which I say in the video, and I believe when I hope we can talk about it, I'm a personal believer, and somebody could say, you're too arrogant to make a stupid statement like that. I think we have such an absence of leadership at every level that it overwhelms me. It overwhelms me. And I think one of the worst areas for leadership, this never gains points with people, is medicine. Academic medicine, it's abysmal. And I can explain why I feel that way. But all you got to do is look at all the empty chairs and deanships and everything else. And then all of the issues that surround our inability to really figure out what changes are necessary in medicine versus just doing the wrong things better and better. What changes do we need to accomplish the goals of the future of healthcare? And those are different in every locale. What's different, what we need to do here versus elsewhere is going to be different.
All right. I think we're ready for Jeff's video.
Good evening and welcome. Unfortunately, I wish you were all here in Chicago, but I'm coming live via video. As a prelude to the question and answer that's going to follow, I was asked for some introductory thoughts on leadership in times of change. For full disclosure, many of my thoughts have been extracted from the writings of others, and the true originality is in my particular bias on what I felt was most beneficial. Change is a simple word, which conjures up different meanings. The noun, coins in our pocket. The verb, to become or make something different. When significant change happens or is proposed, our first response is often an emotional reaction. In some cases, like an engagement, she said yes, a raise, a promotion, or more vacation, all positive. But in many cases, the individual organization asks, why me? Why us? In our willingness to show understanding or cooperation, many will suggest or respond, change is good, but you go first. A title from a book by Mac Anderson and Tom Feltenstein. This is where leadership starts. When change is urgent, significant, or complex, it helps us navigate that emotional hurdle, but more on that later. When thinking about change, I saw a wonderful parable addressing healthcare. It showed one caveman conversing in a cave with another, and the caption read, "Something is just not right. Our air is clean, we get plenty of exercise, everything we eat is organic and free range, yet nobody lives past 30. As this example well illustrates, when viewed over a long time frame, the impact of change on life expectancy is quite obvious. But in contrast, from a short-term perspective, the need for change or the results of change are often difficult to see. Few of us look like we did when we were 30 years old. From fashion technology, we have seen immense change. Yet there's a huge body of evidence that suggests individuals, organizations, which are communities of individuals, resist change or don't recognize the need for it before it's too late. This is illustrated in a well-recognized quote by John Kenneth Galbraith. Faced with a choice of changing one's mind or proving that there is no need to do so, almost everyone gets started with the proof. Instituting change at an individual or organizational level is hard work. Most individuals or organizations are late to recognize the need or urgency for change, which can be very costly to our health or the health of our organizations. Think of obesity waiting for diabetes, hypertension, or sleep apnea, or smoking for cardiopulmonary disease or cancer. Many of you are familiar with the game show Jeopardy, where a hint is given and your response is, who is? So the hint is 60-0. First city with a mile of paved roads. First city with an individual telephone numbers. First company with $1 million in earnings. Answer, who is Detroit and General Motors? What happened? Failure to recognize the need and urgency for change for fuel-efficient, smaller cars from Japan. Failure to adapt, and failure of leadership and death by committee. When we look at healthcare, change is not a new topic. How often do we hear the words transformation or innovation used as a title for a new book, program, or idea? Long before COVID was a crisis and its global impact, healthcare was given a couple of wake-up calls 2 decades ago in 2 IOM publications. To Err is Human in 1999, and crossing the quality chasm in 2001. In addition to long-time concerns of accelerating healthcare costs that exist today, now the quality and safety of care has been called to question. As a result of these publications, there was a sudden explosion of special interest groups in the medical community, politics, and corporate America, like the IHI, the IOM, the NQF, Leapfrog, and many others, who called for new quality initiatives and a new focus on safety. One such initiative, if you recall, was the highly publicized 100,000 Lives campaign, launched by the Institute for Healthcare Improvement to reduce morbidity and mortality and address 6 specific issues and set an 18-month time frame for success. How did the initiative do? Well, 2 years after, Don Berwick and others published in JAMA, and in the article, they said the collective impact of improvement is far below the potential envisioned. Similarly, 5 years after To Err is Human was published, Lucian, Leap, and Berwick said in a JAMA article, building a culture of safety is proving to be an immense challenge. Lack of leadership impedes progress. 10 years after, the New York Times said no progress in the safety of hospitals. Most recently, in November of 2019, Mark Chasin, CEO of the Joint Commission, past committee member of the Institute of Medicine and contributor to Err is Human, said, it's been 20 years and we haven't moved the quality and safety needle as much as we had hoped. The resulting improvements have been pretty modest and difficult to sustain and more difficult to spread. Why have these initiatives and many others addressing quality, safety, and cost been so difficult, despite numerous initiatives and mandates? A simplistic analysis to most individual or organizational change failures can be categorized in 3 simple buckets. Failure to see, remember General Motors, complacency of success. Failure to move, lack of vision, resources, skills, incentives, or a plan. Or failure to finish, lack of culture or motivation to finish the job. In his 1997 book, Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen suggested that individuals and organizations choose between 2 things: holding on to the existing situation by doing the same or even wrong things better and better. Think about General Motors or Kodak. Or seeking new situations or new models of business or care. Think of Tesla. But seek these things incurs risk, necessitates courage, persistence, and most importantly, leadership. As I mentioned earlier, Lucian Leap said, lack of leadership impedes progress. Leadership is the linchpin to successful and sustainable change when change is complex or urgent. Now, I have a very significant bias about leadership, and it's predicated on decades of reading, studying, lecturing, participating in it, and observing it. I believe we have a dearth of good leadership in corporations, politics, and especially medicine. We all too often confuse title or position with leadership. Leading is a verb, not a noun. Our failure in leadership starts in the beginning. How we educate our students, our children, how we pick our leaders. Too many leaders are chosen for their academic or clinical achievements. Isn't it interesting that the best athletes are rarely the best coaches? Now, I'm not implying that strong leadership and strong IQ are bad. Competence matters. No one will follow someone not perceived as competent at the job, but it is not the key to successful leadership. It's been published, suggested, and I agree. Emotional quotient or emotional intelligence is a dominant criterion for leader success. Self-awareness, self-regulation, relationship building, empathy, communication skills, especially listening to understand. Now, there are numerous publications and opinion pieces on leadership skills, attributes, and capabilities. I have a very generic prescription I call Leadership for Dummies that helps recognize the importance of leadership for rapid and complex change. Leadership is about inspiring others with purpose to then influence their behavior to positively impact the outcome. Leaders help us conceive the vision and define the why being taken from Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, who identifies the importance of emotional connection in getting us to change. Leaders provide and enable others with the action plan, resources, incentives, and skills to achieve that change. Leaders define the culture and values to sustain the change, and we heard about cultures of safety earlier, and we need leaders who promote disagreement, conflict versus harmony and compliance. Now, this is very well exemplified by a 1920s quote by Alfred Sloan, then CEO of General Motors. He said, "If we are all in agreement on the decision, then I propose we postpone further discussion of this matter until our next meeting to give ourselves time to develop this agreement and perhaps gain some understanding of what this decision is all about." A leader at any level must recognize one of their most important jobs is their people. In 2014, the Institute of Healthcare Improvement developed the triple aim. Every organization was talking about patient-centered or patient-focused care and population health, patient experience, and cost containment. Well, not to be controversial, although I often am, I'm a believer in the pre-triple aim 2013 book titled Patients Come Second by Barrett and Spiegelman. If we want change, if you want a strong culture, if we want employee engagement going above the bar, then leadership must put people first, as only then can they provide the care to our patients, customers that are needed and or expected. Now, interestingly, in 2016, the IHI recognized its short-sightedness, introducing the quadruple aim, acknowledging work-life balance because of increasing burnout and the importance of the healthcare team and the eventual healthcare of the patients. And even here, change has been slow to come. So before we move on and conclude, what about all of you? Most of us, even leaders, are followers to somebody. No leaders achieve success without followers and team commitment. Followers who believe in the vision and support the culture, but are not sycophants. Even if you don't have a title or authority, you can lead. Mark Sandborn actually wrote a book titled, You Don't Need a Title to Be a Leader. And in John Katzenbach's book, Real Change Leaders, he suggests you can be a leader if you have a commitment to a better way, the courage to challenge power bases and norms, the willingness to go beyond defined boundaries, the ability to self and motivate others, and you care about people and how they're treated and enabled. I believe most people can be leaders or better leaders. You can create or participate in change and a better future. You can make a difference in your own lives, the lives of others, and the life of your organization if you believe you can. Thank you.
Well, Jeff, that was a phenomenal presentation. I loved it. It was great. Your passion is contagious. Strong opinions, very much so, but we will be going through those. I loved what you said when you started out. Change is good, but you go first. The title of that book. Well, here we are, EBPOM, right? We're trying to forge some paths here. Yeah. But anyway, great presentation. Thank you so much.
Top Med Talk.
Thanks for downloading Top Med Talk. Don't forget to subscribe via your podcatcher. Don't forget to check us out on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And also, don't forget, Top Med Talk is the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, evidence-based perioperative medicine. We'd love you to find out more about that. If you check out ebpom.org, you can find low prices on some of the conferences we're organising around the world. Many of them are virtual and don't even involve you leaving your own home. Check out ebpom.org now.